This might be the worst Star Wars game I played so far. And trust me, that is saying a lot. Today we're taking a look at Star Wars The Clone Wars Republic Heroes for the Nintendo DS. Not the Wii version because that's a video for another time. This game released back in October 6th of 2009 during the peak of the Clone Wars hype. This was a tie-in to the animated series, meant to bridge the gap between Season 1 and Season 2, letting you play as characters like Anakin, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka in a brand new story created specifically for the game. But here's where things get interesting. The Nintendo DS version wasn't just a downgraded port, it was actually developed separately by LucasArts Singapore, meaning it's almost a completely different experience compared to the console versions. And if you play tie-in games from the Nintendo DS era, you know how bad it can go. This game came out at a time when developers were rushing to get Clone Wars content out the door, capitalizing on the show's popularity, and let's just say, it definitely feels like it. I mean, this is the second Clone Wars game I'm reviewing on this channel. Hello everyone, my name is DAGG and I'm on a mission to review every single Star Wars DS game. And Star Wars Republic Heroes might be at the bottom of the list. So let's get right into this game, starting with the story. When the first mission begins, one of the things that immediately caught me off guard was the inclusion of CGI cutscenes that looked just like the ones from Star Wars The Clone Wars. It's ripped right out of the show. For a Nintendo DS game, that level of presentation is honestly pretty impressive and does a great job of pulling you into the experience right away. We start off playing as Obi-Wan Kenobi, making our way across a massive bridge while taking down waves of enemies. Not long after, the game switches things up by letting us play as a shiny clone trooper, basically a rookie, who uses a blaster instead of a lightsaber. This already introduces two distinct playstyles, which I'll get into more when I talk about the controls. As we play throughout the level, we switch between two characters to solve simple puzzles and fight off groups of droids. Even though we manage to slow them down, a larger droid force eventually pushes forward and establishes a shield generator on the planet. That's when the mission shifts perspectives and we take control of Ahsoka Tano, guided by Anakin Skywalker, as we attempt to infiltrate the enemy base. After fighting our way through, we finally reach the shield generator and destroy it, wrapping up the first mission in a pretty satisfying way. Now we open the star map and there's a little bit of explanation needed. In order to complete the story, we have to do the levels in this order. So first we go to Chrisophsis, then Ryloth, then Vassek, and then back to Ryloth, etc. But for the sake of this video, I will leave the levels in order of planets, so that way it is more entertaining and clearer for you, and way easier to edit for me. Sounds good? Great. We start the next Chrisophsis mission playing as Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala. And for the most part, you're controlling Anakin while literally carrying Padme around, fighting off droids as you move forward. But then the game hits you with one of those classic moments. You get stopped by a tiny obstacle that you somehow can jump over. And it's like, come on, Anakin could easily make that jump while carrying Padme. But nope. Game logic says no. So now we are stuck. That's when we switch over to Yoda, who at first feels incredibly slow, like painfully slow, until you actually get into combat, and then, dude, Yoda is completely broken. He jumps insane distances, moves way faster, and straight up one-shots enemies. This whole section actually ends up being really fun because of how overpowered Yoda feels. Yoda disables the force field, clearing the path, and we switch back to Anakin and Padme to continue forward. Not long after, we come face to face with Count Dooku for a boss fight. The fight itself has a nice little twist. You attack Dooku as Anakin, but whenever he takes cover, you switch over to Padme to shoot him from a distance. It creates a bit of back and forth that keeps things interesting. Eventually, after a few clashes, we come out on top and defeat Master Dooku. Now that you know a little bit of how this game works, we have to talk about the controls. The controls are honestly some of the worst I've ever experienced. Instead of using traditional buttons, the game forces you to rely entirely on the stylus. You move with the stylus, you attack with the stylus, you jump with the stylus, everything is done through the touchscreen. And while that might sound like an interesting idea on paper, in practice it just feels clunky. It often leads to missed inputs, awkward moments, and fights where things don't go the way you want them to. There were plenty of moments where I tried to attack an enemy only for my character to start rolling around randomly instead. It makes the gameplay feel inconsistent and at times more frustrating than fun. So yeah, that was a big miss, but let's continue with the story. Now we start our missions in Vassek. At the start of this mission, we are told that the Viceroy has fled to the moon of Vassek, setting up our next objective. Once again, we are treated to a CGI cutscene straight out of Star Wars The Clone Wars. This time, we take control of Kit Fisto and we quickly team up with Captain Rex. We actually begin the mission playing as Rex, blasting through waves of droids as we push toward the base entrance. Once inside, the game switches things up, letting us control Kit Fisto alongside a standard clone trooper. This is where the game leans heavily into its co-op style puzzles. And honestly, they're extremely easy, and also a bit tedious. You know the type. One character on the top screen, the other one on the bottom, hitting switches and moving forward. Pretty standard stuff. Eventually, we regroup with Rex and head deeper into the base, avoiding traps, taking out more droids, and even getting a quick interaction with a holographic Count Dooku. As we progress, we finally run into General Grievous for the first time. It feels like a big moment, but just as we're about to defeat him, he escapes. From there, we send a group of clone troopers to report back to the Council, while we take control of them outside the base, holding off waves after waves of enemies. Unfortunately, things don't go as planned, and their ship ends up getting destroyed. Back inside, we return to playing as Rex and Kit Fisto, now in separate segments. Rex goes full action mode, mowing down every droid inside, while Kit Fisto gets another showdown with Grievous. And honestly, this second encounter is actually pretty fun, but it ends in the most ridiculous way possible. Grievous bombs the floor beneath Kit Fisto, but instead of going down, Kit somehow survives by jumping into his ship and escaping in the goofiest way imaginable. In the next mission on Vassek, some time has passed, and it's been confirmed that General Grievous is no longer in the base. With that in mind, the Jedi Council sends Luminara Unduli to recover valuable separatist codes. We infiltrate the base and, as expected, fall right back into the usual loop, fighting enemies and solving puzzles. This time though, we're teamed up with Commander Gree, whose rocket launcher actually helps push us deeper into the facility, adding a bit more variety to the combat. There's one moment in particular that really stood out to me, a large room packed with enemies that, for some reason, just looks really good on the DS. I don't know if it's the lighting or the layout, but it genuinely caught me off guard, in a good way. After more puzzle solving and some pretty obnoxious combat encounters, we finally make it to the room containing the codes. But of course, nothing is ever that simple. The moment we retrieve them, we trigger a trap. Suddenly, we're locked behind a shield with no way out, and to make things worse, our communications are completely cut off. So we move on to the final mission. We take control of Plo Koon, who's been sent in to rescue Luminara Unduli, after all communications were suddenly lost. From the start, it's a pretty intense mission. We're fighting through large groups of droids while making our way deeper into the base, with some surprisingly fun parkour sections along the way. Eventually, we locate Luminara, and thankfully, she's still alive. As we begin our escape, we learn that Commander Gree is still inside, working on extracting critical data from General Grievous' data center. So even though we've completed the rescue, the mission isn't over just yet. We continue pushing through the base, dealing with more enemies and solving puzzles, until we get separated and have to handle platforming sections with each character individually. After regrouping, it seems like we're finally in the clear, but then the perspective shifts. Now we take control of Commander Gree, and things get way more intense. We're put on a strict time limit, just 3 minutes to escape the base. On the landing platform, we have to deactivate multiple nodes while holding off incoming waves of droids. It's chaotic, fast-paced, and honestly a pretty strong way to end the mission. In the end, we manage to get extracted just in time, and the whole team successfully escapes the base. By now, you probably noticed the graphics. The graphics are kind of a mixed bag. The environments are definitely the highest here. Despite some repetition, which is pretty common in a lot of Star Wars games on the Nintendo DS, the locations still manage to look good. The different planets and settings have a nice charm to them, and overall, I actually like how the game presents its worlds. The character models, on the other hand, are just fine. They're not particularly impressive, but they're not bad either. They get the job done without really standing out in any meaningful way. So overall, visually the game sits comfortably in the it's okay range. Nothing amazing, but it's not a deal breaker either. Our next planet is Ryloth, and on our first mission we learn that separatist forces have taken control of the planet. As usual, the game kicks things out with another CGI cutscene straight out of Star Wars The Clone Wars, setting the tone before throwing us into the action. This time, we start playing as Ahsoka Tano alongside a clone trooper, fighting through waves of droids as we push deeper into enemy territory. For a good chunk of the mission, it's more of what you expect, taking out droids, solving pretty mindless puzzles, activating and deactivating terminals, and switching between characters to progress. It's very formulaic, and at this point, you've kind of seen everything the game has to offer in terms of mechanics. Eventually, we call reinforcements from Obi-Wan and Commander Cody, which helps shake things up a bit, but then the game hits you with one of the most frustrating sections so far, an incredibly annoying and unintuitive platform segment, made even worse by the awkward button layout. It's one of those moments where you're fighting the controls more than the actual game. After pushing through that, we regroup, destroying the proton cannons, and finally wrapped up the mission. On the second mission, things take a more interesting turn. We learn that Cad Bane, yes, the bounty hunter, has valuable information about the separatists. He's being captured and is being held in a high-security prison on the planet. But he agrees to share what he knows, under one condition. He wants Padme Amidala to be the one who rescues him. And that's pretty sus. So the mission has us infiltrating the prison as Padme alongside Kit Fisto. As expected, this section links heavily into the game's usual formula, fighting droids, solving extremely tedious puzzles, and slowly making our way deeper into the facility. Eventually, we track down Cad Bane, but freeing him isn't so simple. Kit Fisto ends up separated in another part of the base, which shifts the dynamic of the mission. From here, we actually get to play as Cad Bane himself, teaming up with Padme as they try to escape the planet. It's a cool change of pace, even if the gameplay doesn't evolve much. We're still solving puzzles, taking out enemies, and pushing forward room by room. At one point, we even take down a giant vulture droid, which feels like a bit of a highlight in the mission. After that, the payoff finally comes in. Cad Bane delivers on his deal and reveals that he has the coordinates of a secret separatist base. And just like that, he hands them over to the Republic. Now, we take control of Mace Windu, and the objective is clear. Reach the top of the tower and help free the city of Ryloth from separatist control. We kick things off by crossing this force-field bridge, which already sets the tone for what ends up being one of the best missions in the game. And honestly, this level doesn't hold back at all. From the moment you enter the city, you're constantly dealing with stronger, more aggressive enemies, and the action just doesn't let up. There are even some really cool quick-time events where you take down tanks and mechs, along with some of the toughest droids we've seen so far. It's one of the few times where the game actually feels intense and cinematic, but then the game decides it wants to be a platformer again. And yeah, with these clunky controls, that part just does not work. It slows down the pacing and becomes more frustrating than fun. Eventually, we make it to the top of the tower, where we face off against this jetpack enemy. The fight mostly revolves around deflecting blaster shots by tapping the screen and avoiding the mines he throws at you. It's a bit annoying at first, but once you figure it out, it becomes a pretty easy boss fight to finish off the mission. Okay, I've played enough. It's time to talk about the camera, because it's insufferable. You have absolutely no control over it, which becomes a huge problem when you combine it with the already clunky stylus controls. the result is a system that constantly works against you. Platforming sections in particular become way harder than they should be, not because of the level design, but because of the camera is stuck at awkward angles. Sometimes you only have milliseconds to react to something you can barely see, or worse, the correct path isn't even visible because the camera just refuses to cooperate. The camera also has this tendency to pull too far away from the action, making it harder to judge distances or even keep track of what's going on in a fight. So yeah, it is bad, easily the worst part of the game, and the camera alone just holds back the entire experience. But now we continue to the Ruusan Moon. On our first mission here, we learned that R2-D2 has been left behind in a separatist base, and if you know R2, you know exactly why that's a problem. He's an astromech whose memory hasn't been wiped, meaning he's carrying a ton of sensitive information. If the separatists get their hands on him, it could be a disaster, so naturally, the Republic launches a rescue mission. We begin by playing as Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano, fighting through enemies and advancing room by room throughout the base. Not long after, the game switches things up again, letting us control Captain Rex alongside a 501st clone trooper. From here, the mission alternates between these two groups as they work toward the same objective from different angles. After a mix of combat encounters and the usual puzzles, Anakin and Ahsoka eventually locate R2-D2. Meanwhile, Rex and the troopers continue pushing through heavy resistance, and after a series of battles, they manage to blow up the station, wrapping up the mission in a pretty explosive way. In the next mission, everything goes into full panic mode. The base is literally plummeting out of the sky, and now that we've rescued R2-D2, escaping becomes a top priority. To get out, we need to destroy 2 security terminals, so the game has us switching back and forth between Anakin Skywalker and Captain Rex for a while. Anakin's sections actually stand out here, featuring some pretty fun parkour moments that feel a lot more engaging than the usual gameplay loop. At one point, we switch over to Ahsoka and R2, and we even got to control R2-D2 directly as we deactivate one of those terminals. Meanwhile, back to Anakin's side, after fighting through more enemies, we managed to shut down the second terminal. From there, it's one final push, more combat as Anakin, a rush back to the ship, opening the hangar, and finally making a clean escape just as everything is falling apart behind us. Then we switch up to Juma 9. That actually sounds like Jumanji. On our first mission to Juma 9, we follow up the intel provided by Cat Bane and discover that the abandoned Republic asteroid mining facility has been taken over by the separatist forces. Using the access codes we recovered from Vassek, we're able to infiltrate the base and begin the operation. See how everything is coming together? Really cool, huh? This time we play as Plo Koon and Luminara Unduli, making our way through the facility with a mix of combat, puzzles, and quite a bit of parkour. We fight through waves of droids, take down some vulture droids, and work together to solve the usual co-op challenges. But at this point, the formula is starting to wear thin. You've seen it all already and just want it to be over. That said, there is a standout moment where we traverse across floating asteroids, which actually makes for some pretty cool platforming. Not long after, things take a turn when both Jedi are captured by droids. This shifts the perspective, and now we take control of Captain Rex heading in for the rescue. As Rex, we blast our way through enemies and even destroy parts of the asteroid field to open a path forward, eventually reaching the room where the Jedi are being held. After taking out the droids, we free them and control shifts back to the Jedi as we continue pushing deeper into the base. From there, it's more puzzles and combat until we finally reach the bridge. After clearing out the remaining enemies, we face off against a tactical droid commander. Once we defeat it, we successfully take control of the entire facility. On the second mission, things feel off from the start. Somehow, Obi-Wan Kenobi was apparently on the ship this entire time, and now the plan is to send a message to recover the mining facility. Cool setup, but the execution, yeah, not so much. The first section is easily one of the worst in the game. You're stuck going through multiple rooms filled with tight, unforgiving platforming, long and drawn out puzzles, and painfully slow movements. And the worst part, one small mistake can send you back minutes. It's frustrating, tedious, and just not fun at all. Eventually, we move forward playing as Obi-Wan, but of course we get stuck, so the game throws in a random clone trooper to help out. We do some combat, free Obi-Wan, and then it's back to the usual. More fighting, more puzzles, more parkour. After that, we just leave the trooper behind and keep going like nothing happened. Towards the end, we enter this room, set up some traps, extract some data, and honestly, I have no idea what the outcome even is. Whether the Republic actually recovered the station or the Separatists kept control, it's never really made clear. The mission just kind of ends, but that allows us to visit our final planet, Mustafar. Why does every Star Wars game end in Mustafar? But anyways, on Mustafar we learn that the battlesphere from the previous mission has crash-landed on Mustafar, and it's still a major threat since its weapons could be reactivated at any moment. So we head inside the damaged station, playing as Kit Fisto and Commander Cody. From here, it's a lot of what you expect, fighting through enemies, solving the same co-op puzzles, and slowly making progress through the station. Eventually, we deactivate a terminal that allows Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano to land their ship and join the mission. But getting there isn't exactly fun. We go through several annoying rooms, including what feels like the Bridge of Death, and continue pushing deeper into the station. Along the way, we destroy one firing platform, then keep going and destroy another. And honestly, at this point, it's starting to feel like more of the same. Then the game switches things up again, putting us back in control of Anakin and Ahsoka as we reach the reactor. We're thrown into a boss fight against this original droid character, basically a lightsaber-wielding droid that actually looks really cool. The fight itself is pretty fun. You control Anakin on the ground, going head-to-head with the droid, while Ahsoka supports from above by dropping bombs from the upper platforms. It's honestly one of the most dynamic fights in the game. But then the game pulls something weird. Even though you win the fight and defeat the boss, the story treats it like you lost anyways. It's one of those moments where gameplay and narrative just don't match up, and it ends up feeling pretty confusing. So even though we defeated the boss, we didn't win, we'll have to solve it in the final mission of the game. We take control of Mace Windu as we finally step into the planet itself and begin making our way into the drill shaft. And surprisingly, even though there are parkour elements here, this section is actually fun. It's fast-paced, with collapsing platforms which you have to outrun, which adds a sense of urgency that the game was really missing before. As we descend deeper into the massive shaft, the game throws in some intense combat encounters mixed with quick, simple platforming. This whole section really feels cinematic. It genuinely gives off final level energy, and is one of the highlights of the game. Eventually, we reach this ancient hidden temple, and this is where we face off against General Grievous. And this fight is no joke. Grievous can one-shot you, so you actually have to be very careful here. The fight works by attacking him until his defense bars are depleted, after which he retreats out of reach. To get him, you have to interact with the environment, diverting power to create platforms that lets you climb up and continue the attack. It's a simple loop, but it works well enough. You repeat this process a few times until you finally defeat General Grievous. Or at least you should, because of course, Grievous escapes. With him gone, the situation escalates as the weapon is about to fire. But just in time, we switch over to Yoda, who has made his way into the core of the weapon. Playing as Yoda, we destroy it and successfully stop the threat, securing the victory. And just like that, the mission, the game, comes to an end. Grievous escapes once again, continuing to scheme alongside Count Dooku, and that's where the story wraps. Roll the credits! Okay, I'll be honest. I didn't like this story. Out of all the Star Wars games I played so far, this one easily has the weakest story. It's not that it's bad, it's just bland. There's nothing here that really stands out or feels memorable. I mean, sure, if you're a fan of Star Wars, and especially Star Wars The Clone Wars, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of it. The characters are familiar, the setting is recognizable, and it does feel like it belongs in that universe. But at the end of the day, it's just another one of those stories we've seen 100 times before. Jedi show up, fight droids, chase after villains, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing new, nothing surprising, and nothing that really keeps you invested in what's happening next. So when it comes to the story, meh. But now let's talk about the extras of the game. Like almost every Star Wars DS game, this one has extras. Is it multiplayer? Some fun minigames? Something to actually extend the experience? None of that. Instead, what you get are character and location bios that you unlocked using points you earn in-game. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Honestly, it just doesn't feel worth it. There's nothing here that really adds replay value or gives you a reason to come back once you're done with the main story. So yeah, that was really disappointing. In fact, let's talk about the bad of the game. Because yeah, there's quite a lot of ground to cover. First off, the camera. It's honestly insufferable. You have zero control over it, and it constantly puts you in awkward angles that make it harder to see what's going on. Sometimes the path forward isn't even visible, and other times it pulls so far away that you can barely tell what's happening during combat. It makes everything harder than it needs to be. And that ties directly into the controls, which are just bad. The game forces you to use the stylus for everything. Movement, attacking, jumping, and it doesn't feel good. It leads a ton of misinputs, clunky fights, and moments where the character does something completely different from what you intend. Instead of feeling in control, you are constantly fighting the game itself. Then there's the story, which honestly feels pretty boring. It's not terrible, but it's just not engaging. Missions kind of blend together, and there's nothing really pulling you in or making you excited to see what happens next. The music doesn't help either. There are only a handful of tracks, like maybe 5, and you hear them over and over again. It gets repetitive really fast and doesn't do much to elevate the experience. And then there are the parkour segments, easily some of the worst parts in the entire game. On paper, they sound like a cool idea, but with the bad controls, the awful camera, they become frustrating instead of fun. You're missing jumps, reacting late, or just falling because the game didn't give you a fair chance. And all of this is made worse by the repetitive gameplay loop. Fight droids, solve simple puzzles, switch characters, repeat, over and over again. It doesn't really evolve, and after a while, it just starts to feel exhausting. So even though the game had some pretty cool ideas, some of the core mechanics really hold it back. But hey, despite its flaws, let's talk about the good. Now, despite all of the issues, I don't want to make it sound like this game is all bad. Because it's not. There are actually quite a few things it does really well. First off, the humor, especially with the droids. It genuinely feels great. There are multiple moments throughout the game where the droids have these little lines or interactions that are actually funny, and it adds a lot of charm to the experience. It helps break up the repetition and make the world feel a bit more alive. Visually, like I mentioned before, the graphics are a mixed bag. But the environments, that's where the game really shines. The different locations, even if they can feel a bit repetitive, are well designed and something surprisingly impressive for a Nintendo DS game. There are even a few moments where the lighting and scale of certain rooms genuinely stand out. Another big plus is the voice acting. It's actually really solid across the board and does a great job of capturing that Clone Wars feel. Combined with the CGI cutscenes taken out from the show, it really sells the idea that you're playing through your own episode. And speaking of variety, the game does offer a pretty wide roster of playable characters. You get to control a bunch of Jedi and clone troopers throughout the campaign, which is really cool, even if gameplay-wise they're not that different from each other, all the Jedi kind of play the same, and the blaster characters do too, but still, the variety in who you're playing as keeps things at least somewhat fresh. And finally, one of the highlights for me, the finisher moves. The game has these quick time event sequences when you're taking down bosses or bigger enemies, and honestly, they're really fun. They add a bit of a cinematic flair to the combat and makes those encounters feel way more satisfying than the standard fights. So yeah, while the game definitely has its flaws, there are some genuinely enjoyable elements that keep it from being a complete disaster. So what are my final thoughts on this game? It is not a bad game, but it is certainly weak and bland. It is a game that had a lot of potential, but the clunky controls, the repetitive gameplay loop, it just wasn't my style, but I can see a young DAGG playing this as a kid since I was a big Clone Wars fan. Overall, I give Star Wars The Clone Wars Republic Heroes a 5 out of 10. It could have been great, but all the flaws really keep it low. But anyways, that's going to be all for today. Remember, I am reviewing every single Star Wars game ever released on the Nintendo DS. So be sure to subscribe and leave a like in order for me to know that you guys are actually enjoying these videos. And also be sure to check out the other reviews I already did. But anyways, this has been all for today. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. See ya! Bye!